All right, good afternoon, church. So today we're going to be going through Psalm 139. So if you have your Bibles, then please open to Psalm, I think in Ukrainian it's 138. And we'll only be doing verses 1 through 12 today. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your presence? Or where shall I go from your spirit? And where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will take hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will cover about me will be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. So David opens this psalm with an address to God. And in this address, he introduces like a sort of thesis and a theme. And the thesis is, God, you've searched me and you've known me. And the theme is God's omnipresence, the fact that God is everywhere, and then God's omniscience, that he knows everything. And now, so he says, O Lord. So the English language, it has 8 parts of speech, and one of them is in interjections, I believe. And the purpose of words like oh, or alas, or behold, it's to communicate emotion. And the emotion that I believe David is communicating here when he's saying, oh Lord, is an emotion of reverence, of awe. He is filled with awe and wonder. And if you look to verse 6, you could see why I believe the emotion is awe and wonder. He says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. He also says, Lord. If you look in your Bible, the word Lord is weirdly typed out in capital letters. And translators usually do that when the Hebrew name behind it is Yahweh, when it's God's personal name, his covenant name that he uses with his people. And this will be really helpful, or this will be important later on. But keep that in mind, that he addresses God as his covenant God. Okay, so, oh Lord, he's saying this with wonder and amazement. You have searched me. You have looked through me. You have given special attention to all of me. And you searched me, and some search and do not find. But God has searched, and he came out with exhaustive knowledge about us, at the deepest level about us. And then verse 2, you know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. So in these following verses, David is just going to give a few examples. He's like, God, you've searched me, you looked through all of me, you know all of me. And now here are a few examples of how that knowledge of me looks like, of how your knowledge of me looks like. You know, when I sit down and when I rise up. Or in other words, God is aware of what happens. He's aware when I open my phone, brush my teeth, turn on the car. And I say that because when I sit down and rise up, that is symbolic for everyday activities. That's what David was talking about. He's like, God not only knows the big things that happen in our lives, but also the day-to-day activities when we sit down and when we rise up. He is aware of everything that's happening. And then you discern my thoughts from afar. You parse through my thoughts. You could tell, you put them into categories. You understand them. It's like, when you To give a metaphor, when you're going to a grocery store, at least when I pick out avocados, I discern which ones are the good ones. Like you put them into categories. Okay, this one's bad, this one's good. And so God does the same thing with our thoughts. He not only knows them, knows the content, but He understands them. He discerns them. And so these two things, the first one, when I sit down and when I rise up, that talks about God's presence being everywhere. He's aware of everything that's going on. And then the second one, you discern my thoughts from afar. It speaks to His omniscience. He knows everything, and He knows it well. And He also says this interesting phrase, you discern my thoughts from afar. And I think this is just a rhetorical phrase to show that this incredible feat, it's easy for God. If I could say, I could do my homework upside down with two babies screaming, how much better can you do your homework right side up in peace and quiet? So God could search our thoughts. God discerns our thoughts from afar. It's easy for Him. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. I like how the NASB translation says. It says, you scrutinize my path and my laying down and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. When I think of the word scrutinize, I think of a drill sergeant, walking up and down this array of new trainees, new recruits, and He's scrutinizing them. He's looking them up and down, and He's inspecting them. And so God does the same thing. He inspects, He scrutinizes our path. What is a path? I know I think we all intuitively know what is a path, but we might have trouble discerning it from, or distinguishing it from different related concepts, like a way. So in order to understand because the path, when David says, you search out my path, that's symbolic. He's not actually meaning, oh God, you look at the steps I'm taking on the ground. The path is symbolic. And so in order to understand the symbolism, let's take it literally. What is a path? Well, a path is a route. It guides you from point A, it goes different directions. It weaves around the terrain, it weaves around this space, this expanse, this medium, and it gets you to a goal. And a path that you walk on, it would be the steps you take to get from point A to point B, the actions you're taking to get to your goal. And David says, you scrutinize all these steps I take, every one of them. He doesn't just know about it, but He scrutinizes it. And this adds kind of like moral weight, like, oh, God's not just aware of all my actions that I do in order to attain some goal. He scrutinizes it. It adds moral weight. It's like, wow, God pays attention. So, and then he says, you scrutinize my path and my lying down. So David is obviously using parallelism here. He's like, you scrutinize my path, my periods of work when I'm, walking down this path and achieving a goal. And you also scrutinize, you're well aware of my lying down, periods of rest, when I'm relaxing, when I'm on my bed. You scrutinize my path and my lying down and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. So ways, I think, is a little bit different than path. I think it's worth distinguishing what it means. Ways is different in that it emphasizes attitude, disposition of the heart, the approach, or a mindset. And we could see this in an example, like when a prophet comes and he's like, turn from your wicked ways. Yes, that includes turn from your wicked actions, but it also includes something more. Turn from this wicked mindset, from this wicked attitude that you have. So God is intimately acquainted. It's like as if He has a relationship with it. Like He knows it really well, our ways, our heart, our dispositions, our motives. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. So when you say even, that introduces something like unexpected, out of the ordinary, like, oh, he even cleaned up his room or something like that. So even like this like far-fetched ability of being able to see what someone, being able to know what someone's going to say before they even start thinking about it, before they even start formulating the words to say. God already knew that. So even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, again, this interjection, this emotion, this awe, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. And if we just put special attention on the word it here, what does it refer to? Well, yeah, it refers to all the words that will be on my tongue, but the way he says it, and he says it at the end of this little examples section, I think it's like a loaded term, like he's stuffing everything in there, like the day-to-day activities, my thoughts, my ways, and he's like, God, you know it all together, says Naish. So if we understand this, like if we understand this through the lens of our sinfulness, if our sin is an undertone, then this is terrifying. God knows, our day-to-day activities, the big stuff we do. He knows our thoughts. He knows our heart. And this is terrifying. And our response should be like fear and trembling. But weirdly enough, in the next few verses, that's not David's response. And, that would be irrational. Why does David, respond in such positive terms? And that's because, if you remember, because of the second word of the prayer, of the psalm, he said, "O Lord, O Yahweh, oh my God." That's what he's basically saying. And so he's viewing it through the lens of being part of God's covenant people, of being part of God's people. God is their Redeemer. So how he sees it, and if we too are believers, if you are a believer, then you could say what he says in these next few verses. He says, you hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. I like how the NASB says, it's a little bit more understandable. You have enclosed me behind and before, and you have laid your hand upon me. So David has just finished listing some examples of what God's knowledge looks like. Yeah, it's knows day-to-day activities, and knows our heart, and knows our thoughts, our ways, our actions. And then he doesn't stop here. He says that you hem me in behind and before. God's knowledge is not just some heavenly book knowledge of David. It becomes God's knowledge of him is kind of like put into action, is actualized. God with his omnipresence, he doesn't just observe us. It actually comes into action. It becomes realized. And that's what he's saying. You have enclosed me behind and before. It's kind of a culmination of God's knowledge. You have enclosed me behind and before. And this enclosing, it's not an oppressive siege. God is not enclosing you to destroy you, right? He's enclosing you. This is like as if a father, enclosing his child. This is an enclosing of protection and guidance. You have enclosed me behind, before, and laid your hand upon me. Whenever somebody of authority or a king lays his hand upon you, that's usually a reassuring sign. That's a sign that means favor, perhaps blessing, or even guidance. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Such knowledge that, wow, God knows everything about me. And he also just hems me in and, encloses me and protects me and guides me. He says, it is too wonderful for me. I think oftentimes when I'm reading, maybe when other people are reading, we read just to understand what's the meaning of the words. So like, okay, I get it. It's too wonderful for David. But David is a real person. He has actual emotions and actual thoughts. And don't lose sight of the drama that's going on here. He's saying this is too wonderful for me. This is too much. This is an excess. It's all-filling to the excess. It is too high. I cannot attain to it. I can't comprehend how good, the fact that God has enclosed me and is guiding me and knows everything about me. And so, why does he say that? We only had maybe 5 minutes to think about this. Oh yeah, God knows me. God knows all my, intentions. He searches my heart. He hems me in. And we only had 5 minutes to think about this, but David probably had days, maybe weeks, years. And so the more you meditate upon something, the more it kind of becomes real for you, the more you kind of get a grasp of it. So, I'm sure he really believes this. It's like too wonderful. He is amazed by it. But as for us, let's take a little step back and let us meditate. Why is such knowledge too wonderful? Why is it so high? Does David say, I cannot attain to it? And I have a few reasons, but I'm just going to say 3. So the first reason of why such knowledge is too wonderful is because of the sheer scale and just magnificence of God's attributes. It is exhaustive, comprehensive knowledge. He knows all the hairs on our head, not just on our head, on everyone's head who has ever lived and will live. He knows all our thoughts. He knows all the thoughts of animals. He knows every atom, every subatomic particle in the universe, and is just the grandeur and the bigness of it. In Psalm 8, David does like a similar reply. He's like, when I ponder the work of your fingers, the work of your hands, and he's just amazed at this. So that's one reason why such knowledge is too wonderful, David says, because of the bigness of it, because of the grandeur. A second reason is because of the context that David was living in. In the Near East civilizations around David, yes, the gods were sort of aware, I'm sure they thought that Baal was aware of their actions, but he didn't have like this relationship, this intimacy as God does with his people. The psalm labors the point that, God, you have searched me, you have known me, you enclosed me behind and before. And so God considers and even cares about his own people, and he protects them and he guides them. And this was probably not the case with all the other civilizations. So David is wondering, and he's in awe of this. Wow, God, nobody else but you cares about us. So that is the second reason. The third reason why such knowledge is too wonderful for me is because of the personal application. I'm not sure if David was thinking about this, but when I was reading through these verses, this is what kind of like stood out to me, why this knowledge is too wonderful. Like the fact that I could come to God with all my perplexities, like when I don't even know what to pray. It's like, what do I even do in this situation? I'm so confused. Where is up? Where is down? I'm disoriented. And it's such a blessing to be able to come to God and it's like, God, you know all of me. You know it all. And I just kind of, I don't even know what to say, but I lay it down before you. And a nice verse that I think dovetails well with this is Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. It says, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we could ask or think, according to the power that works within us. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations, forever and ever. Amen. So that's the third reason why, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Where shall I go from your presence? Or where shall I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? So David has just exclaimed the awesomeness. He's like, God, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. He exclaimed the awesomeness of it. And now what he's doing here, I think you can interpret it as he's basically proving the point. It's like saying the financial crisis was bad. Where can I find a good house? Right? That's kind of similar to what David is doing. He's like, God, this is too awesome. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I go from your presence? Where can I go where you will not be? Where can I go from your spirit? Jeremiah 23 through 24 says, am I God at hand, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Can a man hide himself in secret places so that I cannot see him, declares the Lord? Do I not fill heaven and earth? There is physically nowhere you can go to escape from God's Spirit. And the connotation here might seem like unpleasant, but this is not so. God's people need not to worry about escaping, for they are not prisoners under surveillance, but His children. David is trying to demonstrate how wonderful are these attributes of God. So all the connotations here are present. God fills heaven and earth, and there is nowhere that we can go from His presence. And this is truly awe-filling. He also says, where can I flee from your presence? And God's presence and spirit is really related. And we could go on and distinguish between them, but for the sake of time, we're not going to do that. But just know that there's nowhere you could go from God's presence. You can't possibly run far enough so as to reach a place that God's presence cannot also reach. And for us, for believers, for those who call our God Yahweh, this is the greatest joy, as will be demonstrated in the next few verses. So the next few verses are like hypothetical questions. He's like, if I go there, you are there. If I go there, you are there. And it's basically like exploring the answer to the question, where can I go from your presence? Exploring the answer to that rhetorical question, where can I go from your presence? The answer is nowhere. And now he's going to ask, if I go there, are you there? If I go there, are you there? That's kind of to help us like understand and grasp it. So we kind of have like an emotional understanding, a better understanding. Kind of like imagine it, if you will. So verse 8, if I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I ascend to heaven, if I ascend to the highest high, where you dwell, you are there. If I go to that diametrically opposite place, Sheol, place of shadowy existence. If I make my bed there, and making your bed is just symbolic for if I settle there in this shadowy existence in Sheol, you are there too, even in that darkest place. And that place that seems opposite to the heavens where you dwell. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand shall take hold of me. I like the NASB translation. It says, if I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. When I first encountered this, I'm like, the wings of the dawn? What does that mean? And so I kind of thought about it a little bit, did some research, and from my understanding, so a dawn is when the sun is not up yet, but the light of the sun is still kind of seeping into our atmosphere. It's dark, where you can't see the sun, but some of its light is already in the atmosphere. And so, when dawn arrives, the light, although faint at first, it traverses the whole sky. It's everywhere. It's like you could start telling, it's like starting to brighten up little by little. So when he says, when I take the wings of the dawn, he's talking about a pair of wings that can take him anywhere. And a pair of wings that, as the light from the dawn, although we see it increasing slowly, we cannot actually see the actual beam of light. It's incredibly fast. So when he says, if I take the wings of the dawn, he's saying if I take the fastest wings possible, if I take wings that can take me anywhere, wings that the dawn has. And that's what he means by wings of the dawn. And if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, this is talking about location that'll be really hard to reach. It's a superlative. He's saying the remotest, the hardest location to reach on earth. If I go there, even there, even there. If I ascend to the greatest height, if I go to the realm of the dead, if I take the swiftest wings, the remotest part of the sea, right? All these verses all magnify God. They're all supporting our rhetorical question in verse 7. Where can I go from you? Where can I flee from you? Where will you not be there to guide me and protect me? And the answer, of course, there is no such place, even there in Sheol, in heaven, swiftest wings everywhere, even there, your hand will lead me and your right hand will lay hold of me. I think it'll be worthwhile if we just kind of step back and think about what does it mean for God's hand to lead us? What does that look like? And so, God leads us differently in all different types of situations. I can't say, oh, God will lead you this way in this situation. This is how He'll do it. But we know where God will lead us. Romans 8:28. You've probably heard it many times before, and it's a really helpful verse if you're in times of need and in struggling times. And it says, "And we know for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose." So even in the extreme cases, we know that God is working all things together for our good and also for His glory, so that at the end of our life, He will work in such a way so that at the end of our life, or that when we're see Him face to face, if He comes first or if we die, we will look back and we will marvel. We will marvel at His wisdom and of how He dealt with us. Like right now, we might be thinking, God, what do you mean? What do you mean you're working all things out for good? How can this be, how can this death, how can this sickness be working out for good? But I'm confident that Christ is trustworthy. I'm confident that the Bible is trustworthy. And therefore, even if I don't know, I can't see the good that this is working to, I know that God is wise. And when I see Him, or when I look back, as I've looked back many times before, I'll see that it has worked out for good. And yes, I did admit that we don't really know how God will deal with us in every situation, but we kind of actually do get a sense of His attitude. And if attitude is the right word, it's probably not. But we get a sense of how He will lead us if we open up to Psalm chapter 103, verses 13 through 14. And it says, "As a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear Him. For He knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. So though He might discipline us, which might seem harsh sometimes, we know that He does this as a perfect Father. And when He leads us in the heights and the depths, everywhere He'll lead us. And when He leads us, we know He's leading us to good, and He will do it properly. He's like a father showing compassion. Sometimes He disciplines, but He does it perfectly. He knows what He's doing. So even there, you will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. So the right hand is the dominant hand for most people. It symbolizes strength, priority, or favor. And if you remember how, I think it was how when Jacob, towards the end of his life, he was blessing the sons of Joseph, and he kind of crossed his arms, and he was put his right arm on the younger son, and his left arm on the older son. And Joseph is like, "What are you doing? Put your right arm on the older son. Bless the older son." So, a right hand is like symbolic of favor or priority. So for God's right hand to lay hold of you, for Him to have a firm grip of you, that would mean that He's got you, right? You're safe. You're being kept by God's almighty right hand. And even in the worst of situations, David is confident that God's mighty hand will hold him fast. And it's not that he will never be faced with hard situations. He was faced many times with hard situations. In the case of Saul, his own father-in-law was tracking him down, trying to kill him. And then his own son rose up against him, Avisalom, and he was tracking him down. And I think it's Psalm 22, he says, many bulls of Many bulls have surrounded me, strong bulls of Bashan. So for God's strong hand to hold you doesn't mean you're not going to go through tough times, but that it does mean if it is God's will, it doesn't matter how many strong bulls surround you. It doesn't matter, if your father-in-law is chasing you down. What can anyone do? God's almighty strong hand is holding me. Verse 11 through 12. If I say, surely darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. This is the final hypothetical question that will establish the point that there's nowhere you could flee from God's presence. So David is saying that when he is put in a situation where he is made to despair, such are his foes that he's made to despair, where it feels like darkness has swallowed him up, where the light, the hope, has turned into darkness. Even then, he confesses that God is still God, able to deliver, for even the night is as bright as day. Darkness is as light with him, meaning that the severity of the situation, it doesn't pose a problem to God. So, in the case of wars, financial crises, disease or sickness, when you are sure, when you're confident, man, I'm done for. I am screwed. Even there, that situation, it's like the severity doesn't matter. So let us not shy away from, keep on laying our petitions before the Lord. So this is where we're going to stop our study, but I'd like to kind of recap and then share a little testimony. So he says, "O Lord, O Yahweh, my God, you have searched me and known me. You know everything about me, my thoughts, my day-to-day actions, my ways. And then you also hem me in because you are my God, you are my Redeemer." For those who don't know Christ, this is not the fact. This is not the case. But you hem me in with a hand of protection, with a hand of guidance. He says, it's too wonderful for me. Where can I possibly go? Highest highs, lowest lows, the fastest wings. Even there, you will be there. Your presence will be there, and you will guide me. Your right hand will guide me. Your right hand will uphold me. And so we should kind of take comfort in that. It's like whatever situation we're in, just lay it before the Lord and trust Him in that. He is there in the darkest and in the worst of situations. And verse 11 and 12, it resonates with me. If I say, surely darkness shall cover me, and light about me, and the light about me be night. I grew up in a Christian family. I grew up in a Christian home. I think my parents read, for the most part, Bible every night with us. And, I was a nominal Christian. Like, I knew stuff, I knew the stories, but, Jesus was not my Lord. But then, God, how He often does, He works in your life. And the older you get, like in my teens, I remember, the sermon started hitting the heart. It started becoming convicting. My stomach started to sink. How can I, a sinner, stand before a holy God? And kind of like, I didn't understand the gospel message. Okay, believe in Jesus. What does that even mean to believe in Jesus? How do I believe in Jesus? What do I do to believe in Jesus? So I was confused, and I tried being a good person. And there were a lot of fears, a lot of doubts. I mean, I didn't tell this to no one, but, there was a time where, I'm driving in the car with my parents are driving me in the car. I'm like, man, I wish I'd be dead right now because it's bad. It's so much like doubt and fear, and it's crippling, and it was bad. But as the psalm says, I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me from all my enemies. I felt surely the darkness will overcome me. Surely it will overwhelm me, but it hasn't. I cried out to God, and He heard me. So, I was, for those who are doubting, I was in your place. I was listening to these preachers. It's like, what are you talking about? God delivered you? Like, Sure, he might have delivered you, but I don't know if he'll deliver me. That's not true. Cry out to the Lord and he will deliver you. And then also for those who are not part of that group, who are not part of the group of sinners and sufferers searching Christ, who are maybe arrogant. Well, I have the same thing that every other pastor would say is, fear the Lord, because God is a God of love, but God is also a just and holy God, and it is a scary thing to fall into his hands. And so am I trying to scare you? Yeah, a little bit. And so come to Christ, seek ye the Lord while he may be found. So that's our study of our message. I hope if you ever come across this psalm again, Psalm 139, you'll be able to remember and understand it more and better. Amen.